March 25, 1999, 9:35 in the morning, Sydney, Australia. A Bell 47G helicopter lifts off from Bankstown Airport. The pilot, Tim Joyce, notes his passenger. A quiet woman, auburn hair, thick Eastern European accent, 4 shopping bags, nothing suspicious. 7 minutes in, she stops talking. She reaches into one of the bags. When Joyce turns back, there is a pistol pressed against his temple.
Don't move. This is a hijack. Take me to the prison.
Within 12 minutes, that helicopter will land inside the exercise yard of Silverwater Maximum Security Correctional Center. 200 inmates will watch it happen. Guards will open fire. The aircraft will take 3 bullets and escape anyway. The woman holding the gun has never committed a crime before this moment. She is a librarian, a PhD candidate, a former judge's associate, and she planned every second of this from a set of borrowed library books. Her name, as the world will come to know it, is Lucy. But she was born Lucy Dudko in Kemerovo, a Soviet coal mining city deep in Siberia, in 1958. Kemerovo does not produce headlines. It produces coal, cold, and people who are quietly, methodically, exceptionally good at enduring hard things. Ludmila was not just a survivor, she was exceptional. She learned Russian, English, and enough German that strangers would later mistake her for a German national. She studied law. She worked as a judge's associate, one of the most analytically demanding clerical positions in any legal system. A role that requires holding enormous quantities of procedural detail in your head simultaneously and never, ever making a mistake. She read everything. She finished everything she started. In the late 1980s, she immigrated to Australia with her husband Lucy Dudko, a scientist. They settled in Sydney. They had a daughter named Maria. By the early 1990s, the family looked exactly like what a successful immigrant story is supposed to look like. Lucy was doing research. Lucy, using her anglicized name, was working as a librarian at the State Library of New South Wales and enrolled in a doctoral program. Neighbors described her as quiet, organized, and extremely competent. She was also, without knowing it yet, a woman waiting for something to arrive and blow every certainty she had built completely apart. In 1995, at a party in Sydney, that something arrived. His name was John Killick. He was 53 years old, twice divorced, estranged from his wife, Gloria. A gambling addiction had been driving him in and out of prison for 30 years. He was also, by every account of everyone who ever met him, one of the most compulsively charming people in any room he walked into. He was a career bank robber, not the sloppy, violent kind. Killick had a code. He claimed sincerely and consistently that he had never once physically harmed a teller in any of his holdups. He said it the way a man says something he has been waiting his whole life to have acknowledged. He had read more books than most men with his record were supposed to read. He could quote literature. He could argue philosophy. He was completely, catastrophically unsuitable for Lucy Dudko's carefully constructed life. She was fascinated. Within months of that party, Lucy had left her husband. Within a year, she had moved out of the family home. Her daughter Maria stayed primarily with Lucy. Lucy did not see her regularly for the next 6 years. That is the line in the story that stops you cold because it tells you something about the depth of whatever had happened inside her. Within 2 years of meeting Killick, she had moved into a Sydney apartment with Gloria, Killick's estranged wife. The 2 women shared rent, a kitchen, and a bathroom. They were both, in their own way, waiting for the same man. This was not a woman who had lost her mind. This was a woman who had changed it, methodically and permanently, about what kind of life she actually wanted. In 1996, Killick was convicted again on armed robbery charges. In 1997, he was transferred to Silverwater Maximum Security Correctional Complex in Western Sydney and assigned a new cellmate. The cellmate's name was Paul Bennett. Paul Bennett held a private pilot's license. He had thousands of hours in light aircraft. He knew the operational details of every sightseeing helicopter company in Greater Sydney, the approach patterns of every airfield within 100 kilometers, which aircraft types flew which routes, and how tour bookings worked at every major operator. Killick listened to everything. In prison, information is currency. On a Tuesday afternoon in the Silverwater visiting room, he sat across the table from Lucy and told her he had a plan. He had been collecting torn pages from aviation magazines that filtered into the prison library. He had been thinking. He said quietly, leaning forward, that there was exactly one way out of Silverwater. Not through the walls, not under them, not around the razor wire and the vehicle checkpoints. The plan required one thing above everything else: someone on the outside who had never been arrested, who was methodical enough to research every operational detail, technically capable of executing a plan with single-digit minute timing margins, and willing to risk everything she had built for a man the world had written off. Killick looked at the woman across the table and said he did not know anyone who fit that description except her. She did not answer that afternoon. She answered 6 months later with a binder. The problem, as Lucy now defined it, was a research problem, and Lucy Dudko had been solving research problems her entire adult life. Silverwater was engineered to be impossible: multiple perimeter layers, razor wire, armed guard towers, internal sub-perimeters, vehicle screening on every entry point. No way in, no way through, no way under. She began the way she began every project. She read, she bought flight magazines and tore out relevant articles. She collected brochures from every helicopter sightseeing operator in Greater Sydney. She rented films with helicopter sequences from her local video store: Cliffhanger, Air America, Fled, Breakout. She watched the relevant scenes frame by frame, taking notes in careful blue ink in the margins of a spiral-bound notebook. She borrowed technical flight manuals from the state library where she worked. She studied them at night. She returned them on time. She also took a single flying lesson at a small school north of Sydney, told the instructor she was interested in private aviation, paid in cash, and never went back. She had learned what she needed. Sydney in 1998 and 1999 was consumed by preparations for the 2000 Olympic Games. The Olympic construction site at Homebush Bay sat less than 3 kilometers from Silverwater. Every helicopter sightseeing company in the city was running daily tours over the emerging precinct. Bankstown Airport was operating dozens of these flights per week. The clientele was international. Bookings were routine. Cash was accepted. Nobody looked twice at a quiet woman with an accent interested in the Olympic Stadium. She selected the operator, she selected the route, she selected the aircraft type. The Bell 47G was older, small and slow, with an open bubble canopy and a low operating ceiling. Maneuverable enough to land in a tight space. Light enough that a skilled pilot, given no real choice, could set it down on an oval of prison exercise ground. It was the right aircraft. The timing problem was harder. Silverwater's yard rotations were not fixed. The window in which Killick could be guaranteed to be outside at the precise moment a helicopter was overhead was, after months of analysis, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes on any given day. The solution was a phone call. Killick had a mobile phone smuggled into his cell, hidden in the lining of a winter jacket. On the day of the escape, when he saw the guards rotating prisoners toward his exercise period, he would call Lucy's number and tell her how many minutes she had. She would already be at Bankstown, already booked, already waiting. The remaining problem was the pilot. Killick was not going to ask Lucy to hurt anyone. Through a contact outside, he arranged for 2 handguns to reach her. Both appeared real, neither was functional. The firing pins had been removed, the chambers were blocked. They could not fire under any circumstances. Killick would later state in court that he had arranged inoperable weapons specifically so Lucy could not accidentally kill the man she needed to control. Inside the criminal logic, there was a strange and specific tenderness. Lucy had a route, an aircraft type, weapons that could terrify without killing, a call protocol, and a rehearsed cover story. She was a tourist interested in the Olympic sites. She had a paper city map and a small camera as props. She was paying in cash. Her real name was on the booking. There would be nothing illegal about anything she did until the exact moment she drew the gun. On March 24, 1999, she walked into the Bankstown helicopter operator's office and booked the Harbour Bridge and Stadium tour for the following morning. She paid $360 in cash. She gave her real name. She drove home and told no one. The decision was irreversible. March 25, 1999, Thursday morning, sky clear and bright. Lucy arrived at Bankstown Airport at 9 o'clock, with trousers and a blouse and 4 shopping bags. Inside, 2 inoperable handguns, a length of rope, a change of clothes for Killick, a city map, a brochure, and a small camera. Tim Joyce greeted her in the office. He noted the accent. He noted the bags. He thought nothing of either. 3 kilometers away, Killick had the phone in his pocket. His cellmate Bennett was at the cell window, listening for rotor sounds from the south. The Bell 47G lifted off at 9:35. Joyce began his standard narration. Lucy answered his comments in the correct places. 7 minutes in, she went quiet and reached into one of the bags. The phone in Killick's pocket vibrated. He answered it under his blanket. Bennett watched the corridor. Killick listened, said 4 words, and hung up. "I'll be in the yard." In the helicopter, Lucy ended the call. She asked Joyce, in a voice still entirely calm, to take a closer look at the facility below. He turned his head to look. When he turned back, the pistol was at his temple. "This is a hijack. Lower, cross the perimeter." Joyce was a professional. He did not panic. He looked at the gun, looked at her face, and followed her instructions. Inside the exercise yard, roughly 200 men were passing through the particular suspended nothingness of prison time. Then someone heard it. A rotor, coming from the wrong direction, coming down. Killick had been standing in his green prison singlet for almost 12 minutes, forcing himself not to look up. He looked up. 200 prisoners understood simultaneously. Some cheered, some laughed, some wept. No one moved toward the helicopter. No one called for guards. 200 men with every reason to be cynical about everything chose unanimously and instantly to be on the side of the man sprinting across the grass. Killick covered 50 meters and climbed into the cabin. He looked at the pilot, pale and rigid. The gun still held steady and delivered the line that would be quoted in Australian criminal circles for decades afterward. "You can make a lot of money out of 60 minutes if you do the right thing. It's your choice." The guard towers fired. 3 shots. All 3 found the aircraft. 1 struck a structural strut, 1 struck the tail, 1 struck the main rotor. The helicopter shook violently. Joyce lifted off anyway. The yard fell away below them. Damaged, 3 bullets in the fuselage, carrying a pilot, an escaped prisoner, and the librarian who had planned all of it from borrowed flight manuals. They were free. Lucy directed Joyce north with coordinates she had memorized over 6 months. The flight lasted less than 10 minutes. The helicopter landed in a small park in North Sydney. Lucy tied Joyce to a tree with the rope from one of her bags and told him to count to 1,000 before trying to free himself. He was unharmed. Then Lucy and Killick ran to the corner of the park where their getaway car had been parked since the previous night. The keys were in the apartment she shared with Gloria, sitting in a drawer she had forgotten to empty before she left that morning. Killick walked back to the street, stopped the first car that came around the corner. A station wagon driven by a man in his 30s showed the inoperable pistol and asked for a ride. The driver agreed. Lucy sat in the back and said nothing. Killick gave directions in a voice the driver would later describe, oddly, as polite. They abandoned him an hour later in an inner-city side street, unharmed. By 11 that morning, every news outlet in the country had the story. By noon, roadblocks across New South Wales. By 2, every airport in Australia had Lucy's face. By 4, police searching Gloria's apartment found the torn magazine pages, the rental VHS tapes, the borrowed flight manuals, and the binder of typed notes on helicopter procedures, annotated throughout in careful blue ink. The tabloids had their name within 24 hours. Red Lucy. It referred to her hair. In the Australian press of the late 1990s, it also carried a deliberate Soviet echo. The phone tips flooded in, more than 200 sightings in the first week. A woman with a Russian accent at a petrol station in Cairns. Auburn hair at a motel in Victoria. At truck stops between Sydney and Hobart. Most were wrong, some were not. Lucy and Killick moved constantly for 45 days. Motels under aliases, different beds every 2 or 3 nights. Lucy dyed her hair. Killick grew a beard. They drove circuits between New South Wales and Victoria, paying cash for everything, leaving no trail. The mind that had executed a perfect bounded operation with a clear success condition was now being asked to do something structurally different. Fugitive life had no endpoint, no finish line, no measurable success. There was only the next motel and the next alias. Killick, who had been on the run before, found it manageable. For Lucy, it was unbearable. By early May, the argument between them had a recurring shape. He wanted to keep moving. She was exhausted past bone level. She wanted to sleep in the same bed for more than 3 nights. She wanted to stand at a stove and cook a meal. She won the argument. On May 5, 1999, they checked into the Bass Hill Caravan Park on the western edge of Sydney, registered as Mr. and Mrs. Brown, paid a week in cash, and unpacked. That evening, for the first time in 40 days, Lucy walked to the small kitchenette of the caravan and cooked something simple. She stood at the stove and did not rush. For 30 minutes, she was not Red Lucy. She was a woman making dinner. 3 days later, someone recognized her. Police never confirmed who made the call. A caretaker, a neighbor. Detectives were watching the caravan park within hours. May 8, 1999. 45 days after Bankstown, officers moved on the caravan at dawn. Killick was taken without resistance. Lucy was found inside, fully dressed and calm, seated at the small table, unarmed. She did not attempt to flee. She did not speak. She extended her wrists. The most successful helicopter prison escape in Australian history ended not in a shootout or a dramatic final chase. It ended because a woman who had been running for 6 weeks wanted more than anything to cook dinner and sleep in the same place twice. Mulawa Women's Correctional Centre. June 1999. 5 charges: aiding escape by force, aircraft hijacking, causing injury with intent, and 2 firearms offences. Maximum combined penalty: decades. She did not contest any of it. She accepted every charge as stated. Sentencing came in 2001. Lucy received 10 years. The judge described the operation as extraordinarily well conceived. Killick received an additional 23 years and was transferred to Goulburn, the highest security facility in New South Wales. 100 kilometres of locked roads between them, a combined sentence extending past the middle of the following decade. The letters began almost immediately, from Mulawa to Goulburn, from Goulburn to Mulawa. Over the years that followed, they exchanged approximately 4,000 letters, detailed, literate, careful. The same precise mind that had planned the escape now turned its full attention to maintaining a relationship through paper. Then, somewhere around 2003, Lucy converted to Christianity. The prison chaplain was involved. No one has named a specific date. The conversion was genuine. She read scripture daily. She prayed. She began speaking about forgiveness, including her own. The letters continued, but the woman writing them was no longer the woman who had held a gun above Sydney. She had arrived somewhere entirely different, and the person she had become and the life she had left behind could not exist in the same frame anymore. In a letter Killick has described but never quoted fully in public, Lucy ended the relationship. She did not blame him. She expressed no regret about the escape. She told him, in the careful blue ink of every letter she had ever written, that she could not continue and remain the person she had become. Killick kept writing. She did not reply. The same methodical mind that had designed the escape executed, from a prison cell, the most surgical possible exit from the man the plan had been built for. The silence that has held for 20 years. Lucy was released on parole in 2006, having served 7 years. She returned to Sydney. She found work in a library. She has not given a single interview in the 2 decades since. Not to newspapers, not to television, not to the documentary producers who wrote 3 times and received each letter back unopened. Not to the true crime podcasters or journalists who tracked her through employment records. Not to anyone. She lives quietly. She goes to work. She does not discuss 1999. Killick was released in the mid-2000s, served additional time on a Queensland sentence, and reached his final release in the late part of that decade. He has written 3 books and given multiple interviews. He says in every one of them that he still loves her. His parole conditions prohibited him from contacting Lucy until he reached the age of 80. He is today in his 80s. Whether that prohibition has lapsed, neither has confirmed. Whether they have spoken, neither has confirmed. This was not a love story, though love was somewhere inside it. This was not a crime story, though it involved one of the most audacious crimes in the history of a country, not short of audacious crimes. It was the story of a brilliant, methodical, exceptionally capable mind that applied itself with total discipline to a problem it chose for reasons that have never been fully explained and probably cannot be. It was a story about what happens when a plan works perfectly and the life the plan was supposed to unlock does not survive it. The helicopter landed, the man got on, the aircraft cleared the perimeter. By every operational measure, it was a complete success, and she still lost 7 years. She lost the relationship, she lost her daughter's teenage years. She lost, eventually, the man she had done all of it for. The plan worked, the plan cost everything. What does it mean when the most extraordinary thing a person ever does is the thing that undoes them? Lucy Dudko has not answered that. She has not answered anything in 20 years. The silence, like every plan she ever made, is holding.